If someone was just saying, right, well, we're just thinking about the policyholder there, we don't have to worry about anything else, that whole workflow would break because you're not considering the downstream dependencies. Who else has to see that information, that data? So our role there is to help provide context to architecture, data, and engineering. And without that, purely structured systems with Gen AI now that just speeds things up means that we're just going to have fast, useless chaos, things breaking, not thinking kind of holistically of whole journeys. Thanks everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm often told that I need to project my voice. So I actually have nothing in this about me. So my name's Maria McGinn and I'm a designer. I'm not what Oisin just said, but thank you, that was very nice. I work for Aflac, Northern Ireland, as a UX design manager. And I'm going to talk about AI, which is obviously a topic we don't get enough of these days, so I know you are going to have to make it through another AI talk, so apologies for that. So today engineers can now prototype in 10 minutes, and there's loads of tools that you can do that, and this sounds amazing, but for those of us who work in UX, there's probably a little bit of a fear of, well, what is the point of UX? Because I'm saying to myself, watching engineers basically do my job in the same room. Like, what do you think you're doing? Joke, JK. UX design's for everyone. Got paid £20 to say that. But in all honesty, the question should really be, what do people think UX design actually is? Because when I hear people talk about UX design, they'll often describe things like, would be cool if we had a feature that, and then they go on and describe a solution. And a solution is only as good as the accuracy and the specificity, can't really say that, of the problem that it's solving. And we tend to only think about solutions. In fact, I would say we obsess over solutions. Everybody thinks that their idea is the best idea and no one's ever thought of that before. And we spend considerably less time thinking about the root cause of any problem. And solutions are good if they're treated as just ideas to learn more about the problem. And a solution can be very dangerous if people just go with it and don't, think of what the potential impact is of that thing. But AI is a great tool for using it to learn more about the problem. It's also a trap. Deliberately, I used crisps there because I will eat a bag of crisps and then I'll eat 5 in a row. So it's a trap for the solutions obsessed, especially for people who consider all solutions to always be a new feature. And I'm sure there's people here who hopefully can admit that they are also that person, but they also know people like that. And I am also that person who also says new features sometimes when there's no need. So what do I mean by this? This is a prompt for a really useful tool called Magic Patterns. I think it's probably going to overtake Figma soon. It's definitely better than Figma Make in my opinion. So this is a prompt that someone could write. And I work in an insurance company, by the way. So design an all-in-one insurance dashboard that handles enrollment, billing, claims, and reporting all in one place. Someone might read this and think this is a really good prompt for an app. But when you break it down, it's design an all-in-one insurance dashboard, aka solution, that handles enrollment, billing, and claims, vague, and vaguer. And reporting in one place is a massive assumption because who wants to see all of those things in one place? Make it interactive, responsive, modern looking, vague, assumption, vague, and you kind of get the point. The whole thing is just covered in features, vague, solutions, and basically you've described absolutely no context to something that is a Gen AI tool, and Gen AI works best when you give it context. So this will not provide a good solution. What will provide a better solution is if you describe the problem, the ideal outcomes, and how to measure it. and try to avoid giving Gen AI tools solutions, because they are better at coming up with it. And ironically, this is also how many people communicate with designers. So I'm sure a lot of people can relate in this room, probably especially if you're working in an agency and you've a client that comes to you and they say, it needs to have this, and you need to, you were saying there, where'd Rachel go? She left. That she had said that, we want this button to be sticky, we want, and people come to you with all these solutions, and then they expect, there's this kind of collective amnesia whenever the thing that you designed didn't actually give the outcome that the person wanted in the end. So the thing is, this was never designed. So if you're telling a designer what to design in absolute detail of this feature, this solution, this is what it has to look like, then you're not actually allowing them to design. And yet Gen AI has lowered the barrier to entry to UX design, with one big caveat. Most people that are coming into UX design now are thinking of it as screens, and Make It Pretty is now free, thank God. So when people think of UX design as screens, they can do it themselves very, very quickly. Visual design is going to be a harder thing to kind of show the value of, if that's a skill you have, unless it's tied very specifically to some sort of very, very specific brand guidelines, because Gen AI can copy that very, very fast. And my semi-controversial opinion here is, if the biggest UX opinion you've had for UX is the UI is inconsistent with our brand look and feel, and nothing to do with can people complete tasks, can people actually do what they came here to do, then I would say you're probably at this level, unless the caveat is that, unless your experience is absolutely amazing, and then yeah, that is important. But Gen AI does solve the UI side of things really, really well. The next level is thinking about it in features. And this is a big trap, because people tend to not move beyond thinking of things as features. And that's because we're addicted to explaining the how and the what, and not really the why, the when, the where, or the who. And by the way, the why is the problem, the when is how frequently that thing happens. So does it happen every day? Does it happen in the morning? Does it happen at night? Does it happen only monthly? Whatever it is. Where is obvious, could mean many things. It could be physically where, or it could be virtually in what environment. And who is obviously the user. And all of this is context. So if you can describe that when you're using Gen AI, that is how you'll get the best outcome. And then AI is more efficient with coming up with the how and the what, with the caveat being that when you provide it with the full context. And the thing is, as designers, we've spent most of our time providing ourselves with context. So this should be a skill that should naturally come to designers better than engineers or other groups that haven't had to consider the context as much as designers have, and UX researchers as well. So when you describe the how and the what, and not the why, when, where, or who, AI will give you exactly what you asked for, which isn't always what you wanted. So in this instance, that prompt that I just put in there came up with this lovely little dashboard. So again, this is magic patterns. And to someone who's not a UX designer, this might be like, oh, this is lovely, it's clean, it's fairly, simple to look at. But when you actually drill into it, it's like, over what period of time is that premium? And then in insurance, you've got enforced premium, new premium, you've got all these different types of premium. And then things like, is it all of the different lines of business? Is this just for one person? Is that claims paid out? It really is a useless dashboard. So, if you're working like this and you're just putting in solutions, this will be your reaction very, very fast. This is the face I make whenever I get fed up with being really lazy and typing in. So this is why designers often complain that they need time to do discovery and research first. And AI now makes it dangerously easy to ship features with no understanding of the problem that you're trying to solve. So at this level, we need to be thinking more about the who, when, and where when we're actually creating things. and you're focusing more on what is useful than what is busy, or getting rid of what is busy and focusing more on what is useful. So the next level is thinking in systems, and you're no longer thinking of designing a thing like a feature or one singular thing for somebody. And this is where I think at the moment Gen AI hasn't got to, but it will. Like, it'll eventually move up and up and up. But UX designers, this part is more hard than thinking in features and flows and things like that. And just in case somebody's like, what do you mean by systems exactly? That's a bit vague. Designing how things work together. So here is a completely generic insurance thing that is not related to any insurance company at all. And a policyholder might submit a claim online after an injury, and they say it's in review. They don't see who's reviewing it, and they might not see what's missing because that won't tell them that. The employer, so the policyholder will work for a company, and that employer might pay for them to have insurance. They'll see that somebody has reported, so they might see that one of their employees has done an absence report. Then the person in the call centre inside the insurance company will see the account information and the claim details, but nothing on medical context. And then the claim specialist will see if that person is eligible to actually file that claim and pay the payment. And then the CSR can see the payment was made when the person calls the call centre. And then they'll receive their payment. And this is like a closed loop. So that whole interaction, if someone was just saying, right, well, we're just thinking about the policyholder there, we don't have to worry about anything else, that whole workflow would break because you're not considering the downstream dependencies. Who else has to see that information, that data? So at this level, a UX designer needs to be considering the data that is consumed by different users for different use cases and what their jobs to be done are in those different areas. And also the dependencies in certain systems and where things are surfaced. I remember one time I created a feature that I thought was class for a policyholder, and it was for submitting a claim, and it was you write a note, and the person who was adjudicating the claim couldn't even see the note. So I was like, why is this not helping? And it's because the person didn't see it. So I didn't do my homework there, but and there's different ways you can solve this. So service blueprints, obviously, for the dependencies and seeing how things connect. But OOUX, which is object-oriented UX, it's Sophia Prater. She does like a really good way of looking at data and seeing them as objects. And you'll see a policyholder as an object or a claim as an object and how things are connected. And it helps a designer think things out a wee bit more. So our role there is to help provide context to architecture, data, and engineering. And without that, poorly structured systems with Gen AI now that just speeds things up means that we're just going to have fast, useless chaos, things breaking, not thinking kind of holistically of whole journeys. So the next level is behaviour. And this is understanding how humans, even saying humans is weird, but anyway, humans think, decide, and behave under friction, which sounds a little bit like obvious in UX, but given that there's now all these new AI conventions, we have to consider these things a wee bit differently. There is intent friction, so what do I even ask for? How do I interact with this thing if it's agentic? And then transparency friction, which is particularly important in agentic AI when, like, what did I just do? If something's going off and doing something, how do I even know what are all the tasks it's doing in the background? Control friction, can I stop or correct it? Context, why is it showing me this? And then trust friction, should I believe what it's showing me? And cognitive, this doesn't behave like tools I know. And this is also going to be harder because you've got different models and different models act in different ways. So not everything is going to act the same way that ChatGPT does. And you've got different types of models that are good for specific things. I don't know if anyone here's used Nano Banana yet, but it's pretty fun for images. And then ethical friction. So why does it know that information? People sometimes are a bit horrified whenever it can tell you. I think I asked ChatGPT, what does it know about me? And it gave me my full address. And I was like, how do you know that? And I was like, you put it in 3 months ago. And I was like, okay. It asked me, do you want me to forget about this? And I was like, yeah, forget. Yeah, role of friction then, who is responsible now? So again, with agentic AI, when it evolves further, at what point do we say that, we as humans aren't responsible for what that thing just did? So these are kind of 8 sort of different frictions that we have to be aware of when we're designing for AI. And it's all about misinterpretation, trust gaps, and emotional states. And AI cannot empathize, even though it might act like it can only predict. So designers here need to consider where the human stays in the loop and when humans' judgment is irreplaceable. And the question here is not about how the design works. It's more when should humans interact. And then the last one is kind of related to this, but it's more about thinking about the fact that there'll be a time where there won't be interfaces on things. And I know that sounds mental, but that's the way it's moving. That as we work, the way we work today, where you've got a screen that you interact with, that is all going to evolve eventually, and it will eventually look crazy that we all carry these big laptops around with us. But defining what should actually be designed is going to be the next kind of thing that we as designers need to try to think about strategically, not just how to design it. And that's balancing business versus human outcomes. And our role here is really what are the conditions under which good decisions can be made by AI and humans together, and which ones can just be left to AI. And it's all about governance, explainability, and there's a whole thing. The more accurate a model is, the less explainable it will be. So, if you want, in the likes of insurance, if you wanted to automate a claim completely, you have to be able to explain how it came up with that. And the ironic thing is, the more accurate it will be, the less you can explain how it came up with it. That's just the way it is. So, so if you want it to be more explainable, it's going to be less accurate. So it's not about human-centered design. It's more about human-aware systems. And our role here is to ensure that the AI augments human capabilities rather than replacing human reasoning. So just some of the things, some kinds of things that will still require human reasoning or human in the loop will be when context is more important than data. So an example of that could be, that's a very dramatic machine over there. When just as an example, a billing employee delays escalating an invoice because of a key client relationship, that's something that AI will never know, but a human will. Meaning over accuracy, so that's kind of more explainability. If you want to explain how something came up with something, it's going to be less accurate in coming up with that thing. So it could be translating a risk model into plain language so that a user trusts what it's saying. And then ethics over efficiency is deciding what data should be used, even if it improves the model accuracy. And then empathy over logic. An insurance agent realizes that someone they're selling to is grieving and focuses on empathy before discussing coverage. And for judgment over automation, it could be a hospital administrator deciding to pause automated scheduling during a local emergency. And for creativity over consistency, an entrepreneur reimagining how an existing system can serve a different audience. So these are kind of some of the things. There'll probably be more things that, as AI evolves, that we'll realize, right, a human is actually needed for that thing. So it's not necessarily Gen AI about, we just have to design faster. Although that is the expectation that people will design faster is definitely going to be there. It's more about how we coexist intelligently and responsibly with AI. So that's it. That's me. Sorry.